A
All's
little
well,
bit,
man. How are you?
hasn't it?
Um, should we should we not say how long it's been, and maybe people won't notice?
There's so many other exciting things going on in the Bitcoin crypto world. I'm sure everybody is just enthralled with all the news, uh, good and bad. That yeah, didn't need our
Number go
commentary,
up.
but we're back at it. Yeah, in the middle of the bull, number go up technology. All my buddies from you know multiple chats about Bitcoin and pricing and stuff, and it's just so funny how the activity of the chats just skyrockets with the price. So yeah, good to be back on as well, chatting about this stuff.
Do we think something's actually catalyzing it? Because it's just kind of about that time. And so people will point to whatever's happening at about that time every 4 years, and they're like, "Oh, it was X." But you know, it also just seems like we're in that point in the cycle.
Yeah, I think we're just coming back to it. I mean, you know, having coming up here in April, May, and usually, of course, the price in the historical 4 cycles has exploded after that, but we sort of uh, we sort of broke that early on the last cycle as well. You know, going up at the start of 2021 rather than the end of it.
People buying Bitcoin for Christmas.
So it's kind of the
People buying
what's
Bitcoin
that?
for Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did we all say was the reason it started going up again last time? There was some catalyst.
Just
I just can't
meme
remember what.
stocks and trading people online and thinking they're even
Oh,
Taleb, even Nassim
yeah,
Taleb said,
right.
"Oh, it's time for Bitcoin," and he was like complaining as he always does, and he was complaining about some Coinbase problem. It was clear he like first time he tried looking at it, and then like 2 months later he wrote his manifesto on why Bitcoin wasn't going to work.
Mm.
So yeah, this
It's amazing he has time between all his weightlifting posts to
I haven't
comment
even
on
I hadn't even tracked him in a while, but if
economics.
he's still doing the same thing, then no,
It's
good on him, I
probably
guess, for
fake
that. But
news or stupid anyway, but I read somewhere recently like that. I think it's Dubai wants to acquire like a massive amount of Bitcoin, which is more than in circulation right now. Or Qatar, yeah, and
Oh,
and that
Qatar.
drives the price, but yeah, doubtful.
So someone kind of like had the good explainer on that, which was the rumor was they wanted to buy like $500 billion
right.
worth of Bitcoin, but their entire sovereign wealth fund has like $40 billion in it. So
Oh,
somewhere
I
there was
didn't
a
see
delta
that.
in
Yeah,
the
that's a
math.
big delta. Um, I mean,
Yeah.
the Norwegians have 1 trillion, roughly. It's probably a little bit more at the moment.
Yeah, and that don't quote me on the numbers, but there was like, what was
Yeah.
possibly available and what was rumored. But there was someone did go visit Bukele. Was it the Qataris as well?
I didn't follow it.
Yeah, I just saw it. It was like this week or last week. Someone from the Gulf states was over
I just saw him
hanging
tweeting
out.
recently that they are finally up in their investment. So.
They said they were buying 1 Bitcoin a day for a while. I don't know if he kept up with that, but if he did, that would be a very good move.
Yeah, what do you guys make of his um, crackdown on crime?
Michel?
Uh, I don't know with this kind of regime if you can really say anything about it. Like, what is news, what is not. It
Yeah.
looks better that
I mean,
it used to. So yeah, isn't it like time for re-election soon?
and
I don't
they
know.
only have a 1 term thing, right? So that was his plan, was to try to switch it to go again, as well as all the other judicial things. But I imagine the truth's somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, probably certain members of the population, and I'm sure immigrants as well, whether they be connected to Bitcoin or not, are happy that if you're cutting down crime and but the deal that you're making there, how you're making that, or I've heard all sorts of wild things with the gangs down there, whatnot. I mean, obviously it's well out of my pay grade, and I, I don't know. There's certainly a lot of human rights watch organizations that are questioning that this whole thing over the last couple of years. So I don't know. What do you think, Alec?
Yeah, it's a successful marketing campaign for sure, and they're very good. I mean, punching way above their weight at sending a global message. It's really that. I think on that note, he in particular, and I'm sure there's a social media mechanism behind them, are fantastic at messaging. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, pictures of rows and rows of tatted up gangbangers in a prison yard, that that sells well in a crime-ridden country. Um, I also would be a little bit curious in how that was implemented, and you could probably have a philosophical argument about, well, did they sweep up 10% of those people who were not guilty of anything but just standing on the wrong street corner, had the wrong friends, but crime was reduced by 70%? What's the greater good, right? Like, you could, that's a really dispassionate type of conversation to have about actual people. um, and he seems to be in the camp of whatever the greater good is
Yeah.
justified. At least that's how he
Yeah.
presents his actions, right? um, but I do think it's interesting, especially living in a U.S. city that is has an ascendant crime problem, um, and your visceral instinct is like, we just got to be super tough on crime and prosecute everything and put everyone in jail, and that pendulum swings until everyone, you over criminalize, and then people get into the type of mindset that got us
That's
here. But it doesn't seem to stay in the middle. Like, the balance point
yeah. That's
is
the
short lived.
Kamala Harris view, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's like, a lot of mayors have been elected on platforms like that. A lot of district attorneys have stayed in power on platforms like that, but it seems to be running its course. I don't think
Yeah.
people like it. Um, but it really, that sort of softer, like,
Yeah.
rehabilitative approach to crime, it's sold well and it's a nice idea. Super nice idea. I don't think it was implemented very well.
Well, I think I mean, it's backing up a little bit, or backing out of the situation. But the wild thing for me, just watching this year, and I'm sure you guys are feeling the same, is just with all of the global conflicts that are, escalating or continuing, like, Ukraine and now Israel, and you have Argentina really being shaken up economically. Uh, yeah. And
Guyana.
you have, yeah. And in the Southeast Asian area as well, of course. Um, the interesting thing is this sort of natural tendency to want to embrace nationalism, populism, shoring up, you know, your resources, shoring up your authorities, making sure everything is sort of buttoned up. And it's just a wild thing. I mean, my dad always told me this is like exactly not comparing to this situation right now, but what happened in the 20s, 30s en route to World War II in Europe in particular was just everybody. There were all sorts of nationalists, quasi dictatorial governments. Like here in Eastern Europe, we had this guy Carlos Ullmann. I mean, he was basically a benevolent dictator, but he took over the democratic government after a couple presidents, prime ministers, and I don't know in Poland, Michel, if you know what was happening, but there was a lot of them. I mean, obviously, leading up to the main ones in Soviet Russia and Nazi Germany, but even in all the other countries, they had this like just groundswell of nationalism, and obviously we know where that all ended up. So it is kind of a scary thing that literally 100 years later we're sort of singing this tune again.
It's definitely going in a weird direction. Like I spoke with a friend in the Netherlands. He's a French national in the Netherlands, and he said jokingly, like, I'm backing because of the far right new election results. So yeah, we will see a Netherlands exit after the Brexit. Or...
Yeah. It's funny because, you know, I don't know. I think a lot of Bitcoiners probably enjoy that, shaking that up. They think that there's something that's going to be good coming out of that. And I can empathize with a lot of those feelings, especially when you're talking about, going back to the US, just the left wing might be as just corrupt as the right. And the debt increases no matter the party and all that stuff. The money depreciates no matter the party. But uh, I don't know, just being over here, maybe it's just more sensitive to it, but it's like we don't even worry about all of the woke stuff or whatever the flavor of the month is that's kind of angering people like Joe Rogan or Douglas Murray or Jordan Peterson. And I do enjoy listening to a lot of that commentary, but I find a lot of Bitcoiners like that. That's getting angry about, some uh, man who is swimming in the for ladies competitions and stuff, which is definitely, I mean, that's a problem, I would say, in certain cultural things in the West. But all of those issues that people talk about, it's just like over here, it's just nothing when you're talking about real war. He's talking about what's going on in Israel, talking about what's going on in Ukraine. Um, like it's just wild to me that people aren't considering these as like major humanitarian things that need to be addressed. And, looks like the U.S. may pull back funding for Ukraine. And that's obviously very disheartening for those of us that appreciate borders on this part of the world.
Yeah, well, they're making it a border issue here, right? Whether the funding goes through. So the new speaker, Mike Johnson, which one of his platforms was closing the southern border, and he knows that Ukraine is like the main leverage point right now. So it's politically expedient for sure.
I find interesting parallels too between what's happening in Israel and Ukraine. I mean, like DeSantis, for example. I mean, he wanted to throttle Ukraine, and then with everything that happened in Israel, it's like the message was complete 180. And there's definitely an inconsistency there. If people can't see it from the far right, of saying that you want to not support Ukraine, but you do want to support Israel. I mean, I definitely think Israel should be supported and defend itself. I know that that's a whole topic that we haven't commented on any of that, right? Over the last 2 months, and that's a huge thing that needs to be solved. But I mean, if you just want to talk about, sovereign territories being respected and not having people invade your territory, which Israel did have done to them, I think it's a wild inconsistency that some Republicans think, well, okay, let's focus on Israel only, but Ukraine we need to back up on. And I don't know. This is a more U.S. centric thing, Michel. Maybe we can move away from this topic, but I just think that this is like the reality of the world. Like you're gonna have interests that need to be defended if you're a liberal democracy or a liberal country in the proper way to use the liberal world. You're gonna have to defend borders and rights at some point. And this stuff is just, I don't know, for us it's really scary over here. Again, going back to my own selfish reasons, but I don't really see a leader in any party in the U.S. that can kind of, like a Ronald Reagan type character or even an FDR type character, which, when he went, the body was barely cold, and they introduced 2-term limits. So there's a lot of things going on in these analyses. But I mean, I don't know. To me, it's really a massive rise of authoritarianism, and like I can't believe that some people even think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think the support for Israel being different from the support for Ukraine boils down to the fact that Israel has forever played U.S. politics in a very savvy way, via support for APAC and
Yeah,
donations, and good on them, right? They're not breaking any rules. They just realize that they have a vested interest in having a U.S. ally, and their self-interest is in having as much
yep,
leverage with that ally as possible. And I
yep.
would do the same thing if I were them. But that they've been doing that for a really long time. So
Yeah.
this is not surprising. That's how you get 3 carrier groups.
Yeah. It's wild. Was Poland having a crisis in the Constitution leading up to World War II? Michel, do
I
you know
have no
that history
idea.
at all? I mean, I know that obviously they suffered the most at the beginning from all sides. You know, the Nazis invaded them on September 1st, 39. The Soviets invaded them on September 17th, and just got, you know, the Polish story is a very enlightening one, I think, for just havoc breaking loose. And by the way, it was home for like the massive home of world Jewry, even for 1,000 years. I think there was something like 100,000 Jews fought for Poland against the Nazis in the first month of 1939. So it's a lot of, I don't know, in my view, there's a lot of intersection there between lessons from history and what we can see now. But I just don't see anybody rising to the occasion. And if we get like a Trump character in, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not
It
a big
seems
expert on recent Polish history, and the early Polish history is room for debate at home all the time because of my wife's origins. So that's not settled yet.
Yep. Well, that's where I am as well. I mean, Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, and Ukraine. Interestingly, these sort of middle lands of Europe between the Western empires and the Eastern Empire of Russia have always been fought over. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we're still seeing that. Anyway, is that enough geopolitics?
We
We
could go
could.
on forever about
We
that,
could.
but we could talk about
We could.
Bitcoin.
I got the old. I got the old percentile bands with the power regression trend line up. Can you guys see this on screen?
Nice. Are we going to get a price prediction?
Yeah.
That's what everyone really wants.
So, and actually, I did a short on this a couple weeks ago, and people were saying again, we don't need to talk about that past. We want to see what these look in the future. So yeah, this is up to a couple days ago drawn. It's going to be drawn on pricing action as of December 5th. So 3 days ago, as of this recording. Even when the price is about the same, so 40. Although I haven't checked in the last hours, it can always be volatile. What is it? Is it
I think it's
43?
like
Yes, it's a little
43
bit down
today, right?
from this level. But what you notice here, and if you look back all the way to the FTX bankruptcy and whatnot, we're like really in undervalued, oversold territory. So when you get to that red band, that's a 2 standard deviation move down. Even like with this ripping in price, we're not even back to the trend line. So I think that's always important to follow that. So the trend line itself, $61,000. It's at 95% R squared, which is like really, really strong. This is why I'm not a fan of technical analysis. I just like this. Just draw this trend line. And yeah, if price is below this black line, the line will go down. This is not a plan B, rigid stock to flow analysis. It's just a standard statistical percentile, a power regression. And so if the price is below it, it will pull it down. If the price is above that black line, it will pull it up. But generally, it's been around this level since 2016, the black band. So it's pretty interesting, I think. And yeah, we're in like normal territory. We're above the 1 standard deviation down. So that's at $30,000 Bitcoin. So anything between those blue lines is 2/3 of the time pricing action based on this multiple. So it's like we're just back. It took us a year to get out of it, year and a half, but we're back to normal levels, and we're not even at the trend line. So that's the first point. You want me to predict?
So strong
I want
buy.
to predict out. So the halving we mentioned, May, April. Let's say the trend line shows 71,000. Again, this is just beautiful number grow up technology, right? So 71,000 is the trend line. 1 sigma up, which would be big pump, is 160,000. 2 sigma up, 480,000. And then if you go out, say, a year after the halving, which would be our old 4 cycle analysis, right? Am I right on that? It would be 2024.
2025.
No, actually be 2020.
Yeah.
Be
But
2025.
25.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. 2025. Um, so that's going to be 125,000 on the trend, one standard deviation up, 278,000, two standard deviations up, 824,000. And if you go back to the 2021 booms, all right, 4 years ago from that level, you see that we never did hit the two standard up, which is interesting. But we did hit it in 2017 briefly, and we hit it in 2013. And you even hit it in 2011, which was like a 2-year cycle. But this was the Slashdot article, by the way. You want to see the old? I started this at Bitcoin Pizza Day. So the old Slashdot article took the price way up from like a penny to 10 cents, and then it was off.
So the last cycle, when you look at it, is like softer than the previous ones. It's softer every time.
Which is interesting. And there's a lot of I've seen these guys that do the again, I'm not drawing the trend, like I'm not doing anything on TradingView or anything. I'm just mathematically showing these lines, like where the percentages stand of how the price trades around this trend line. But a lot of people try to say, yeah, okay, maybe it's going to be softer. They're pulling down like what looks like my two standard up, that red line. They pull it down. Okay, maybe it will be softer, but obviously I don't know. They don't know either. But
And did we hit
this
the
trend line
bottom
has
red line?
held. We did. No, good question. Before we never really did. Never did. You see, just here in the crypto winter, but it was so brief. And actually, this is where again you gotta be looking at this thing enough to really inform. The black line here, I'll show you exactly what I mean. The black line is always moving up or down, right? So back in 2015, the black line was higher. It's like you'd have to see. It's a different analysis, but the black line's moving up or down, right? Always on price. So now, looking at the all-time trend, yes, we did hit it, but back in 2015, the trend line is actually higher. So at the time, we didn't go, and we never have. I've done that analysis. We've never gone 2 sigma down, kind of at a current trend line until this point, until old SBF took us there.
Yeah, that's very short actually.
Which is interesting. Yeah, it is very short. So already bumped up the start of 2023, and probably even bumped up more when those banking crises happened. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. It's just interesting to look at. So between these red lines now, it's 95% of the price action. This is, and when I say 95% of the price action, it's based on where the price is above or below, like a multiple, you can imagine, above or below the black line. So that's how you can make it comparable back into the past. So, yeah, it's very rare. Basically, it's a 5%. It's a 2.5 percentile event on the top, 2.5 on the bottom, 5% total, be outside these red lines. And then, if you want to back it out, I take this all the way to 2030. It's about 600,000, and this is again been lower. I remember doing an analysis of this like a couple months ago. It was 600,000. Now it's 583,000 because it's been pulled down by our low levels. But I believe it is going to go back up. I think that's probably the main point, which I always say, is that this black line has been pretty. If you look at all the year-end trends, it's been pretty much the same since 2016. And before it was way up. Like the 2010 trend was, you'd be at like $1 billion. You'd be like hundreds of billions of dollars Bitcoin if you followed the 2010 trend. So that we're off that trend, unfortunately. But here, 600,000. And if you look at the 2 sigma up move, 3.8 million per Bitcoin. So not bad. Hodl on. Not financial advice.
Yeah, of course. But at 3.8 per Bitcoin, you have like such societal shifts that would have to occur as well to be there. Like we haven't really had to have societal shifts to get to any of the numbers right now. We've had speculative interest and financialization and stuff, but at a certain point, it becomes such a big asset class that it's like really changing global economics, which is cool, right? It's really interesting to think about. We're closer to that than maybe we are far
Yeah.
from the beginning. I don't know.
It's
Um,
it's actually on 600. I don't know what the 2 sigma up is. I mean, I guess you could just do the multiple of 3.8 million divided by 200. Sorry, 600,000. But at 600,000, uh, do my math quickly. Is it 30 trillion or 20 trillion? It's yeah, it's market cap. It's
Total
20 to
market
30
cap.
trillion, let's say. Uh,
Yeah.
I should be able to do that in my head, right? Or is it 18 trillion? I'm pulling up the old calculator. 600,000 times 21 million. Only 12. Am I doing that right? 12 trillion? 12 trillion.
Yeah.
So, that's like the size of gold now. So on the one hand, I hear what you're saying, but on the other, it's actually not that big compared to something like gold. But
Well, at 600,000,
yeah,
but at
exactly, very
3.8
true.
million.
So what's 3.8 divided by 600,000? That's a multiple of 6. So yeah, then you're up to like the 60, 70, 80 trillion dollar asset class, and then yeah, it is. And I agree with you though. I mean, like
Yeah,
that
you get up there.
that goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. I've been more cautious over the years following Bitcoin as long as I have. I'm sure you guys are the same. But you know, I was like I was super excited at the early years, and especially 2017. I thought there was going to be a just big runs, and wasn't really looking at this analysis enough, things like this, to sort of dampen the enthusiasm, or at least make it more realistic. But I don't know if things keep getting as bad as they do, um, and you know, people really might need a spot to look at their, to hold their assets. I wonder if you might have this sort of hyper Bitcoinization scenario, which I should say is not really charted here, right? Like this is a pretty gradual standard, as we said, getting to somewhere around gold's market cap or a little bit above that by the end of the decade. I think that if you have this like real hyper Bitcoinization moment, uh, yeah, I mean then this thing could look completely different. It could just, you might have that $3-4 million for Bitcoin, and then there's like no going back, and there's like real big societal changes. But I don't know, the way that things look around the world, maybe we will get there sooner than later. I don't know. Any thoughts? It's too big, too macro, too global of a topic.
Well, maybe it's time to talk about the technical issues which might prevent that.
Good point. Good point. So you're the man to take us there, Michel. Which one do you want to talk about over the last couple months? There's been a variety of interesting
Well, I
ones.
guess we could start with Lightning.
Ordinals,
There was
Lightning.
that not an attack, but a vulnerability disclosed by Antoine Rayard in Lightning over all the implementations, and it's basically not fixable. It requires a protocol change to be fixed, but it's also very hard to exploit. I won't go into the technical details because it's way above my pay grade. But basically, you could like coordinate an attack between two channels and a relay to drain the money from the relay. It's well explained by Mononote on Twitter, and there is also a Medium article about that, which explains it with pictures. But yeah, basically that adds to the many what I consider being disappointments of Lightning. Like we are going to a growing centralization, custodiality of Lightning, and then real technical issues that might just compromise the protocol entirely. And I don't really see an alternative, like any other second layer so far that could replace it.
What about something like Fedimint? I guess they're mostly
Yeah,
relying on
that's like
Lightning anyway.
orthogonal. It can be used completely like offline and off chain. So yeah, it kind of solves some issues,
Right.
but you still have to like enter and exit from the federation itself. So uh,
Yeah. It's either it's kind of like if you don't have Lightning, and I'm not saying it won't happen, but if you don't have Lightning, it's kind of like basically a distributed banking type structure where
Yeah.
if you
It's
really want to get
it's
that Bitcoin back to the
an
base chain, it might be
IOU
pretty
on
expensive.
Bitcoin basically, but
Yeah.
with federation based trust. So you trust your federation.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there is L2. I have no idea how was the status of L2 right now. There was that other Lightning alternative. I already forgot the name because it like made a buzz on the social media for a few days and then disappeared. Nobody's talking about it anymore. So yeah, as a user, I'm using Lightning only in a custodial fashion as a sender, and as a merchant, I have one node which is like with one big channel with a huge routing node, and that's it.
Yeah.
Many attempts to run a through Lightning network with many nodes, like ring type structures and many satellite nodes failed. So no, not trying that anymore. And when I see other people like trying to use things like Phoenix, it's basically good for spending, very bad for receiving. Yeah, it's not easy, and users still don't understand like why you need to open the channel. Like most asked question when someone installs a Lightning wallet is, okay, so now how I receive? Well, you need someone to open the channel to you. Yeah, so custodial wallets solve that problem because they have incoming capacity. Um,
Yeah.
there is this Swiss Bitcoin Pay, I believe, which is basically custodial payment processor for merchants, and they also have NFC cards to spend, but it's only accounts on an LNB. It's one big centralized node. So as long as you use it as the basically a layer 3, which is a database on top of Lightning, it works. But if you want like each user to have their own nodes, I think that's a model that will never work.
So, and it's like you said, it's unfixable.
Yeah. So
So
that,
that's been
well,
demonstrated as
this
well.
issue is still very hard to exploit, but so the way, for example, Eclair, which is the other wallet of the company who makes Phoenix, which is async. What they do is they monitor all the mempool action around their channels, and they just rebroadcast transactions as soon as they see any attempt to exploit it. That's the only way, and like you have to rebroadcast the transactions with increasing fees each time. So basically, like the first one to have no money left gives up.
So by
Yeah.
rebroadcasting, it
As soon
doesn't
as you
allow
see the
time for the attack
attacking
to occur.
transaction in the mempool, you have to overwrite it with a legitimate one with higher fees.
Oh, interesting. So you just use the attack to like force someone to spend a
Yeah,
lot to
spend a
protect
lot and
themselves too?
basically waste it in mining fees. So yeah, so it's pretty
Yeah, yeah.
impractical.
And if you were doing a lot of transactions, might break
Are
that
you
up.
guys using a lot of Lightning?
No. And
Not often.
I wanted to run that actually by Henrik from uh, formerly Ellen Capital,
Mm-hmm.
now Torque, because they were. But I think he's probably going to have the same uh, expectations as that you're having. I mean, uh, and anyway, the I see this. I again, as a non-technical person speaking, like if this bug is managed or fixed or whatever, it's still something that's only going to add to centralization, probably, right? Probably, based on how you know aggressive with liquidity you have to be to sort of stop the attack. I don't know if that completely follows. If like retail people can can work through this, but again, It's just another reason why everybody's using Wallet of Satoshi, which is depressing
Yeah.
a little bit.
And then putting aside any technical issues, I know many Lightning related projects that just run out of funding and stop developing them. So it's like either you're in the VC Silicon Valley style funding club that you just raise for paying your company and raise again and raise again. Either you just die if you want to make a profitable business just from selling your service.
Well, I mean, hopefully can work through it, and maybe there'll be some other breakthroughs that can come because of that. But I don't, I've said this a lot. I don't know what you guys think. I'm not necessarily opposed to people using custodial solutions to scale, like considering just how finance has always worked in the past. But uh, what cannot be centralized for sure is the way that on-chain transactions work. And if on-chain transactions become so expensive as we see every time, even just during simple bull runs, and now we have the ordinal stuff on top of it, that's like a big risk, I think, in the future, because it's the only time the fees go back down is just when the rest of the mainstream forgets about it. And if they haven't, then you might as well just keep trading on your exchange or something, because that's the best way to avoid fees, is just not using an on-chain payment to do
So
stuff.
you mentioned Wallet of Satoshi. I found the tweet I was looking for. So Wallet of Satoshi was pulled from the Google and iOS app stores in the US. They posted a pretty long tweet about it, but without any explanation. And people mentioned in comments that it's probably related to some regulatory problems. I have no idea what exactly it can be, but yeah. So even in the custodial side, things don't go very well.
Yeah, well, that's another topic I want to chat about. And Alec, I don't know if you've been following that anymore, but it seems everything's going fully draconian. Elizabeth Warren is not deterred. They're just going to keep coming after anything that they can do. It's just hosted wallets term, which is a hilarious term, right? But if you have a hosted wallet, then you better do some KYC on it, or someone better do some KYC on you, which again just gets back to this depressing loop that we're in. And it's just vicious. They're just going to keep coming.
Yeah, I agree with that in principle. I I also think that the fact that, like, we could take Elizabeth Warren or others, they just keep throwing arguments at the wall. Like, they haven't found a winning argument. So, um, there was like the energy consumption, and then funding Hamas, and then funding North Korea. And I don't think anyone, like, you lose credibility the more you just keep coming up with arguments. I think they would have been more compelling if they had found one or two arguments and really stuck with them for a couple of years. So I just don't think the evidence lines up with the claims. And I do think the community has done a really good job of being vocal in disabusing, some of these more ridiculous claims, or the ones that are overstated. They may be factual, but they're wildly overstated, right? So maybe some Bitcoin did go to fund Hamas, but we found it wasn't. I forget what they claimed, right? Like $22 million, and they found that it was actually like
Yeah,
100,000
Nick
or
Carter
something.
did a deep dive on that, but I can't remember exact numbers. I mean, there was still, yeah.
It was a huge delta, right? So the underlying fact was true. Some money got to them, right? But it was so little that they stopped trying to collect in Bitcoin because it wasn't worth the effort.
Well, what do you feel about the whole prospects of regulation around Bitcoin in the next 3 to 5 years? Are you still pretty optimistic then? You think the community is handling it well? Because I don't know, it could just be the way that the Twitter algos push things to make me mad or sad. But yeah, I was just reading things from Coin Center and reading things from, I don't know, all over the Twitter sphere, right, on regs, and it's just, yeah, like you said, it's the same old arguments, but they're going to keep throwing them at us.
Um, I think so. I think the irreversible trend is as like sort of a certain generation of politicians ages out, the newer crop is going to be much more
Yeah.
pro crypto. So like the Warren cohort could have a win and it could like be a 10-year damper, before someone comes in or some, younger cohort comes in to reverse it. That I think is possible. I don't think the long-term trend is towards
Mm.
regulating Bitcoin to death. Um, there's too many people that own Bitcoin, and a lot of people that are younger have some idea of the philosophy behind it. They might not be, entrenched in it, but they have some idea of that philosophy. Um, and I do think the community does a pretty good job of. So it's not like, oh, we just sit back and let the destiny
Yeah.
arrive. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of fighting that goes on, and political lobbying, and the fortunate cases of people in power who have kids who are talking to them at the dinner table. Like we hear that all the time. Even Jamie Dimon just said it. He said one of the first times he came out against Bitcoin, his daughter texted him the next day and was like, "Hey, I own
Is
two
there an update to
Bitcoin."
that story? Because
Um,
that's an old one, but I remember.
it just came up again because he was, out on his
Oh,
Bitcoin rants again
okay.
yesterday.
Well, and he's still ranting the same,
But
I presume.
Giancarlo,
Yeah.
oh yeah, oh totally same, yeah. He said if he was in power, politically, he would ban Bitcoin
Yes,
or
as he
say,
would, being CEO of a most successful bank in America.
yeah, right, yeah, just like, yeah, I get it, self-interest. Um, but I don't think the long-term trend is towards over-regulation of crypto.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I hope so, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm definitely too fatalistic about that, or that the U.S. can control all, because I think this is another thing that will be interesting over the next few years. Is the U.S. is probably going to have to realize that they can't really control everything here, and if anything, they're just annoying their trading partners with all of these regulations, even well beyond the scope of Bitcoin and crypto. Right? I mean, it's the same old stuff. Some draconian things that the Treasury likes to do, um, which I can tell you I've noticed just being an American living abroad for many years now, and
Mm.
it's well, it's
Like
just the
what?
reporting. Like whether you're an American citizen or
Yeah.
certainly an American business overseas. I mean, you're basically completely beholden still to the U.S. Treasury. Even if you're a foreign business with an American owner, the reporting levels just go through the roof, and um,
Mm.
it's very onerous. And so whether it's a simple thing like if you're an American overseas and the bank that's banking you says, well, all right, I'm just not going to do, I'd just rather close your account since you're American than deal with the reporting that your treasury wants me to do, which has been happening a lot for many, many years. Uh, or the businesses just say, well, we're going to start not doing business with America, which is bigger, which is a much bigger uh, sort of repercussion than any sort of individual complaining. So I think they're still pretty draconian about all of that. And I don't know if you saw this stuff. I saw Peter Schiff tweet about it, but there's all this things now that are happening with unrealized gains that they might try to want to tax businesses and stuff. Okay, this again, a bit of a tangential topic to what American companies and individuals overseas, but I don't know. The Leviathan just keeps growing in the U.S. and it seems like a lot of interests want to pull away from it, or at least just get it back, down to something more normal and more historical, and not being so aggressive with everything. Um, I I have to imagine it's not going to be acceptable to partner nations of the U.S., even the trading nations of the U.S. I just think that the U.S. won't get its way there. It seems to me.
Yeah, I saw the untaxed gains things came up again. That's come up before because it feels like a
Yeah.
piggy bank. you know, it's such a moronical idea. I don't. think it's ever really gotten any like
Yeah.
real traction. It's I it would be better if it never came up at all, for sure. And I think the risk is you combine the narrative of this like wealth transfer from the boomer generation down, largest wealth transfer ever, with the fact that a large portion of that wealth transfer will be in unrealized gains, as portfolios are handed down generationally. That's the perfect time for that argument, for sure. And it's the perfect time for looking at the government capitalizing in new ways on death taxes and estate taxes. But the unrealized gains part, it's just like so counterproductive to economic growth. I'd be surprised if it
Spain
happened.
has it. Does France have it, Michel? An unrealized tax. So if you don't even sell, but they want to take the value of your assets and take a very
If
small
you
percentage,
want to
sometimes not so
leave the
small.
country, you have to pay the unrealized gains tax. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We have that too.
We have
But
that too.
even
That
if
part.
you don't want to leave, just every
No, no,
year
no. It's only
survey your
if you wanna
assets.
leave.
Okay.
So Spain has it over.
They and I
have an
think
actual.
other countries have it. Like even some you might not expect. Maybe even Holland has it. Like to a small. It's not like a massive percent because it, kind of can't be
Mm.
without bankrupting you.
Well, you
But
have I don't know how to translate that. The fortune tax, which is like if you own more than X million euros amount of assets, then you pay a percentage on it. But
so
that's
you
not
have it. That is what
that
they're talking about.
that's not what we call unrealized gains tax. Unrealized gains tax for us is if I now own shares in a company, and that company could potentially in the 5 next years be worth much more, and I want to leave the country, then I have to pay a tax on the hypothetical future value of the company.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
even more
Really?
controversial. No, we're talking more about the fortune tax,
Wow.
and it would be the
Mm.
same in the U.S. It would be a fortune like big companies, big business, big rich individuals, billionaires, whatever, to start. That's all they always start it, and then of course it would come down to the plebes as well. So I don't know the intricacies.
Oh, I have my plebe hat on. Can you see
Nice.
that? This is my plebe hat.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
don't know the intricacies of Spain, but if it, I presume there's thresholds and stuff, and it's as most countries, right? Like most people don't even pay taxes anyway. It's just the wealthy that file and pay. But anyway, that's a more annoying topic that we got ourselves onto, isn't it? Uh, what else, guys?
wait, let's go back to this not paying taxes thing. Where where do I go to be that?
Yeah, never trust, especially if you're an
Right.
American, never trust a tax accountant that tells you you don't have to file, that you don't have to pay.
Yeah. And
Does
by the
not
way, for anyone
exist.
listening, I
Yes,
was joking.
indeed.
Um, our accountant is like gleeful with how much taxes we pay. It seems to make him really happy every time he denies us any kind of like wiggle room. Uh, so somehow I think he
Yeah.
enjoys it.
Should I show the old national debt one just to show you how ludicrous it all is anyway? Here, let's
Yeah,
yeah,
why not ruin the day early?
this one might not be updated. All right, here we go. Uh let's not do it in log. Let's zoom in. Let's take central bank out. Zoom in. So this is I haven't updated this actually since until first quarter, but still you get the idea. I mean, just talk about talk about, you know, governments getting out of control and reining in things back to normal times. I just never see it, fellas. At least in the U.S.'s case, and I'm pretty sure in every other country's case, is no matter what anybody says. Remember, I think I've said this in an earlier up with you guys. Like this cresting here, this was Bill Clinton's famous
Yeah.
balancing of the budget. But other than that, man, it's just off to the races. The Fed buys more and more. It's trying to shed a little bit of that now. Um,
I mean, it is a material. Is the darker
No,
green?
the
Is that
darker
M
green is
two?
the Fed's portion. Yeah, sorry, I should have pointed out the Fed. That's the Fed's
Oh, I
portion
see.
of the national debt. So it is, as a percentage wise, it was highest during COVID, almost 30%. Now it's dropping, and it will drop a little bit more in the last 6 months, somewhere closer to
What percent did
20%.
it
So it's
drop?
like 28. It dropped 5 percentage
Oh,
points. It's probably closer to 20 now. And you saw that as well after the three big. You see this QE1, 2, and 3. You can kind of see that monetization of the debt, basically printing money to buy U.S. Treasuries. And they try to normalize that back down to, until the start of COVID, it got down to like 15% from over 20. So they will always try, but this is the one where I do. This chart does make me kind of fatalist, and it's just like, man, we need an asset like Bitcoin to protect us because they're just going to keep trying. And they're going to keep making you feel bad unless you pay those taxes, Alex.
yeah. I was already feeling bad. Uh, are you following the Chinese debt, like their state and local debt?
No, I need to get that charted up. I will soon. Theirs is
Yeah,
out of
I
control
mean,
as well. And it's a lot of bad debt, as far as I understand.
yeah. Well, this morning, I read something on the internet, so take it for what it's worth. But it was the claim. It was like a decent source. I just can't remember what it was. That they have 13 trillion in like state and local, or their equivalent of state and local debt,
Could
uh,
be.
which is like
It could
that's not
be. Yeah, no,
national
state
debt,
and local
right?
is not national. And I
It's
mean, they have, well, they've tried to do all these distributed government things, I guess, since the 70s, because they were so, but now that's turning around with Xi, like trying to centralize things again. But they just have these cities, man. They just have massive cities of just literally empty buildings that no one has lived in. I know you guys have heard those stories, but it's not, all the evergreen stuff. Like, that's not
Yeah,
going
and
away anytime
the
soon.
EV
I don't,
graveyards as well. Like they produce tons
yeah,
of cars which
yep,
are never used just to get tax benefits.
yep.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
But
That's
they're trying
interesting.
to recycle those. They're not
Uh,
recycling the batteries from those cars.
I don't know.
They're just throwing them in.
They're just burning them.
Yeah, it's wild.
oh, it was because Moody's um,
Rating.
cut their like
Yeah,
rating outlook, yeah, to negative,
Hmm.
and that's where the debt numbers came from. So it was like
yeah.
a decent
And I got to get the
source.
interest payments versus the revenues charted up. But I mean, soon it's not 100% of it, but you're gonna, it's you're gonna have a huge portion, like maybe 50% very soon. Maybe it already is of interest.
And that's only what
Taxes
they
just
admit
going to
to, right?
fund
It's not
interest.
like the real numbers.
Yeah, that's true because you have the unfunded liabilities, which, uh, it's just through the roof.
So did the Chinese post like actual central bank data?
They do, they do. Yep,
They do.
I'll show you.
Does it? Yeah. To your point, Keto. I wonder. You know, like to what extent do we consider that accurate?
Uh, I would definitely say should be kind of skeptical, but there are a lot of people that also cross, sort of triangulate different things, like what they think
Yeah.
they've sold to China or what they know they've sold, whether it's Europe or Japan or the U.S. And at least from a central bank level, I think it's probably more or less accurate. But as far as all the
On a
other stuff
scale
you're talking
from
about, like the
0 to
debt,
COVID numbers in China, how accurate is it?
so so I just did the third quarter update, right? And oops, I got to do it on the actual chart, don't I? Here's the Chinese debt. Rest of the world take off. So China is, uh, you know, 1/5. They all are basically 1/5, and then the big four, and then the rest of the total debt. So you see that the peak here was close to 30 trillion. Now it's down to 26 trillion. China has 5 trillion of that as base money that they printed. That's the notes and coins. There's also the reserves that banks have with the central bank. It's just like the number that compares most to Bitcoin. And yeah, everybody's really trying to cut back because of all these high inflation numbers, which of course are going to happen after you have massive money printing from COVID. So they really have been trying to rein it down. But I will note, even as of September 2023, and I'm looking at the dark black line here now. Let's take off the top 5%. The dark black line, you're still only back to October 2020 levels. So it's not like, if you wanted to take it back to pre-COVID levels, you'd have to get to 20 trillion. And again, we're at 26 trillion in total central bank money around the world that's being printed. That's the top 50 currencies in the world. So, it's massive stuff. Again, the dollar here, this is US dollar monetary base, another fifth. Look at euro. Christine Lagarde acting like she's going to normalize that thing. Not a chance. And then Japan, as always, they're like the professional money printers. They've done it faster than anybody. They're in dollar equivalent. And this is the other interesting thing, actually, because it's, what's the Wittgenstein? It's Wittgenstein's ruler, right? It's hard to, I'm showing you these local currencies, but in dollar terms. So keep that in mind. This is kind of interesting. If I look at everything non-dollar, right? It is true that the rate of growth of this money is decreased, or it's actually like roughly like flat. You say it's 0% year on year, but it looks down because they've lost value to the dollar. See what I mean? So they're really not slowing the money printing that too. They are slowing it. This is why interest rates are going up. They are slowing, but really what hits them is they lose value to the dollar, which is also interesting. So you can see that those three together, 6, 5, 7 trillion, 18 trillion here at the peak. And then now they're down to 15. Yeah, so losing like 3 trillion collectively. But most of that, in fact, almost all of that, is not because they're actually decreasing the money printer. It's because they've just lost value to the dollar, which is an interesting phenomenon. The dollar, add the dollar, and you had British pounds, about £1 trillion worth of monetary base. It's not that much. And that's the top 5 currencies in the world. And the rest, fill in the gap there. So that is the Bitcoin number, my friends, 26 trillion. And what would you say at the top of the show? So 12 trillion is 600,000. That's by the end of the decade, 12 trillion. If we stay on that $600,000 path, that still won't even take you to half of what we have here. So, but 12 trillion would be huge. And like you said, you get up to 50, 60 trillion, then you're basically in global money territory.
So are we going to have a Bitcoin trillionaire before we have an AI trillionaire?
Good question. Did you guys follow what happened? Not to dodge your question, but did you follow what happened with the OpenAI, all that craziness?
Yeah, with interest. I don't have an
What did they
opinion
say?
on
The
it.
fact that he came back, that he was brought back on. It's just basically employees wanted him back on, and
Yeah, so 700 of the 770 employees basically said we're going to go with Sam to Microsoft if he's not reinstated. It came out later that supposedly some people, the employees, felt coerced into that, and they were due some kind of there was some kind of option distribution, or they had some financial upside to stay based on the pending allocation. So it wouldn't have been great for them to go to Microsoft personally financially. I was much more intrigued by the, what is it about this like Q development that scared Ilya, if that's what happened, because supposedly it does math. So LLMs, right, have been predicated on language, and this is a math-based AI. And so, is it like, does it break cryptography, right? Like, what does it enable that scared someone?
Yeah.
That I find interesting.
Did you read any interesting hypotheses? Like why the board kicked him out?
Uh, well, breaking all
Yeah.
cryptography would be one. We'll get there with quantum anyway. Um, yeah, no, it's so poorly handled by that board. Um, I don't know. I'll just wait
Yeah.
till the Netflix special, but I
Yeah.
can't wait to find out
Yeah.
what actually happened.
Agreed. No, it's a pretty wild time with all the AI stuff. Does it scare you?
I mean, what do you guys think?
No real opinion, but I don't know. What do you think, Michelle? Does it scare you? All
I think
the
what scares me is AGI, but I don't think we are close.
I think it is curious that old Altman, is behind WorldCoin.
Yeah,
They're going to come after that. I'm going to get that WorldCoin going.
Does it have any
I don't know.
traction? I mean, it's like, I remember when they launched it. I don't
Elizabeth
really ever
Warren's
hear
going to
anything
be
about it.
like, "Come on, Mr. Altman, we got to get that WorldCoin going. Screw Bitcoin."
yeah. I think other than in some third world countries when it's pretty popular because you get some coins when you register on the orb. It has no
It's
traction.
just like the most
Yeah,
creepy
Yeah.
thing.
But are
I
people
have no
like
idea.
transacting in it? What does it do for you?
Puts you
Yeah,
in a database. That's for sure.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah.
Any thoughts on Signal, Alec, for the our privacy portion of the show? You sent us an interesting article about
Um,
the the or the
I
origins of
did.
Signal
We
and the
can.
funding behind Signal, which we had all suspected, but I guess was it the first time it was made public? Is that true?
I don't know. This is the first time I had read, like, and we can put the article in the show notes, and I don't know anything about the author. It's, a Substack blog post, but it is an investigative piece on where the funding for the Open Whisper Foundation has come from over time, since its inception, really. And I thought the inception part of the argument was interesting because, someone had to get it off the
Mm,
ground. And what the author contends is that, through cutouts and aligned interests, it was really the CIA that funded it. Now, and the argument there is that the CIA sees an advantage in there being a open source, widely available secure comms application that could be used to destabilize, authoritarian states, or the whole classic like government
right.
overthrow playbook. Um, I mean, it's plausible, right? I don't know if it's true, but what I always come back to is, even if it's not true, the fact that so many people use Signal and consider it secure makes it the number one target for every intelligence agency on the planet to get into. Nothing would be better than getting into Signal. So if you assume that, GCHQ and the NSA and all of the other, adversarial or friendly, or however you want to consider them, intelligence agencies, they'd be looking to, intercept key exchanges. They'd be looking to break uh, what's the double ratchet algorithm, right? Like anything they could do. And typically they've been successful in that in the past. So has it been cracked? I have no idea, but I would consider it like a great target to crack. And so that's why I've always considered it, not something that I would put like the crown jewels of my
Yeah.
personal information into.
What would you recommend people use? Not Signal.
Well, if you live in a city, you can get a pigeon and just attach a message. Um, I don't know.
Noted.
So my personal philosophy is, so I am interested in like where the developer team come from and where the project at least purports to be domiciled, right? So not that like domiciling is any indication of trustworthiness, but it's some indication of the interest of the team and the kind of cultural background of the team. So that's interesting to me. Two, not using the same messaging app for everything, right? So spread it out across different messaging apps. And some of that is just happening through like the balkanization of secure comms, right? You have people from different countries use different apps, or like the Bitcoin community likes certain applications, and so you're kind of forced into having a bunch of different commercial messaging apps or CMAs. My default one is still Matrix, because of the decentralization of the nodes. I don't know if it's like, I don't have the technical expertise to assess whether their cryptography is better than anyone else's. But what I've seen of third-party assessments is it really requires a malicious node to execute any of the attacks that have been publicized. And so because you can run your own node versus with all the other messaging apps that I'm aware of, you have to rely on them, Signal included, then it gives you a small bit of increased autonomy. And so I
Yeah.
like that.
And it's also like, at some point you just have to go to the easiest, most practical thing and do what's best for you, because kind of going back to these large topics that we always get to, whether it's regulation or war or cryptography breaking, I mean, at some point you gotta just say, okay, this is what I'm going to use. This is going to help. But it is kind of daunting. I can no doubt say. I mean, still for me as a non-technical person, but for someone that's like new coming into the space, or someone that wants to try to get up to snuff with their security protocol, and I know that's what you help people do, but I don't know. It's just almost like too crazy. Like this AI stuff that you're just
Well,
talking about. Like if the next AI thing could break encryption, you just gotta say it's too much at some point.
it reminds me of that movie from the early 90s,
Yeah,
Sneakers, which is it's an awesome like
it is a
hacker
very good
cryptography
movie.
movie with Robert Redford. So good. But the premise of that movie is that someone had developed a way to break
Mm-hmm.
all cryptography, and what that would mean. And there was, Ben Kingsley plays so they make him out to kind of be a bad guy, but there's a sort of subtext about whether breaking all cryptography is good or bad, right? And they have this entity they refer to as C-Tech astronomy, which is just an anagram
Yeah.
for, is anagram the right word? Right? You move the letters around and it becomes no more
Hmm.
secrets.
Forgot that
Such
part.
a good
Yeah,
movie. But
nice.
so like, and I think it's like two different questions, right? So are intelligence agencies interested in breaking Signal or any other application? Probably. For sure, they're interested. Have they? Who knows? But do those applications protect you from things like Verizon or Orange being able to hand over your text? Yeah, they do. So there's definite value to them. And what I'm talking about more of an esoteric, like extreme case. But for day to day, like, you know, they do protect you from certain types of intrusions. So yeah, there's great value in using them over just being like, they all, I don't know which one, right?
Yeah,
I'm just gonna
no,
go back to SMS.
yeah, totally.
That's your worst
Definitely agree
choice.
with that. I think that's a very good.
Speaking of which, have you seen there is a company that released an app which is a native implementation of iMessage on Android? So now Android users can send blue bubbles instead of SMS.
No,
Nice.
They used to run it like as a cloud
that's
service because you
interesting.
had to register an Apple account, and they were basically just running proxies on Macs in a data center. And they just reverse engineered the whole protocol, and the app runs natively, no Apple account required.
So Apple
Apparently.
trusts the
And
encryption
also,
of a third
I've just
party.
seen like yesterday that Apple
I don't know how
agreed
they
to
do that.
enable this new protocol that is interoperable between messaging apps. I don't remember the name, but yeah, basically you'll be able to send end-to-end encrypted messages from your native messages app to anyone now. Yeah.
To other messaging applications,
Uh,
like
let me try to
to
find it
like
real quick.
WhatsApp, and
You probably just mean still the
or is it just
iMessage
like,
thing,
No. It's like a
right?
cross-vendor protocol that I wonder if it's not a requirement in the EU now. Just a sec, I will try to find it real quick.
Mm.
because Matrix has what they call bridges, which is either like proxies or puppets that allow you to bridge just for not for voice, just for messaging into some like into Skype and Telegram
And how would
and
that work in
WhatsApp.
Telegram? Like, what would the Telegram people see? Uh,
They're not witting. Like it just looks like a regular Telegram message.
right, but uh, would is it because Telegram's one of the companies that would not necessarily trust with all my info, let's say, but they if you're on Matrix bridging into Telegram, what does the Telegram uh, servers, the servers that are owned by Telegram, would they see?
Yeah, it's some kind of like proxy between your from inside of your, let's say you're using Element, or
Right,
there's a lot of different Matrix
right,
messaging or apps, right? But Element being the most common. You're inside of Element and you kind of credential from within Element into the bridge, which then is a proxy into your Telegram account. So I don't know what
yeah,
it looks like to Telegram, but they allow you to authenticate
yeah,
in. It's like almost like
yeah.
a
So
portal
it's probably
login.
just you're still getting the same privacy level of Telegram if you use something like a bridge, right? Yeah, it's not like it's
100%.
protecting you.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
purely
convenience.
a
Yeah, it's not like it's
convenience.
protecting you in any way.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at, I guess.
No.
In my
No, yeah, you're beholden to
yeah
wherever you're bridging into. So it's not like it brings,
level of
Matrix,
encryption.
what they call their
Yeah,
cryptography ohm. It doesn't
So
bring it
it's
in.
called RCS. Shit, I just lost the page. Yeah. So Apple says iPhones will support RCS in 2024. Yeah, I will just send the link. Maybe you can include it in some show notes or something. And I'm trying to find that app
yeah.
on Android.
So I'm wondering if part of this is because um, cross-border SMS or cross like telco SMS is not a super reliable backend. And so if you can switch to pure data as opposed to relying on SMS,
Yeah, and
it's
cross-border SMS
probably
is crazy
more
expensive as well,
reliable.
unless you
Uh,
receive. Yeah.
yeah, it's expensive, and it typically
Mm.
is governed by a standard called best effort, which means like if I'm trying to text you SMS in France, right? It's like, hey, we tried to give it to
Yeah.
them, but we all we can do is hand it to the local telco, and that's why you receive it sometimes without like the actual correct caller ID. Sometimes it comes in as a short code. Like it just depends on a variety of things. Sometimes it doesn't
Yeah, and
go at all.
MMS is even worse because it's like costs you both the transport for like from the telco and the data.
Yeah. Well, and at least SMS has like it's sort of a much more understood quantity of data versus MMS. You can be sending files or large images, and um, the billing on the back end of that apparently is very
So
complicated.
would this beeper protocol probably just bring you convenience as well, not really privacy, presumably?
I don't know.
Well, we'll link it and definitely let our listeners.
Yeah, I'd love to know. I'd
Yeah,
actually love to know more.
Michel, do you think it's spamming the blockchain to do ordinal transactions, or no? It's not an easy
Yeah, it's
answer,
not an easy.
perhaps.
So I agree with the fact that it's an inconvenience for other users because of the fees we have to pay. I don't agree with any kind of way to prevent it because that's against Bitcoin ethos. That's my
Yeah,
position on it, I guess.
yeah, and I haven't been following it super closely, but it seems that if the Ocean protocol is going to go that route, where I think some of the, I saw our friend Seth for Privacy was making a lot of posts about it. You probably saw that, Alec. But yeah, I guess if the main
Hmm.
concern that he has was the fact that they're not transparently doing that, it's kind of even a separate issue. I mean, maybe that maybe they would even gain traction. They would gain hash in their pool if they maybe sort of publicize that more. But again, I'm not following it close enough to see if that's even the real issue. But it seemed like that was somehow an issue that people just couldn't agree on what they were and weren't. Maybe censoring is not the right word, but filtering.
Yeah, I really haven't I haven't seen the transparency issue yet discussion, but basically what my understanding is that they are running Bitcoin nodes, which filters out transaction based on the size of a payload or a part of the payload, and from what I read from Samurai Wallet is that they don't even respect the like maximum size which is set in Bitcoin Core, which is like 83 bytes. They do like 40 bytes instead. So even some legitimate users, assuming that ordinals are not one, are penalized by that. But yeah, that's a lot of ifs. So maybe until next show, I will be able to research it more
Yeah.
and have a better understanding.
Yeah, and I'm sure the landscape will develop there. But it is interesting to see. I mean, we've been through this before in certain ways about what gets through and what doesn't.
Yeah, it reminds a lot of the block size
Changes to
debate, but in a much
yeah,
lesser extent and less noisy.
yeah, and it seems that privacy, not just user preferences, but privacy will also be a component of some of this stuff as we go on in the future. I think you were mentioning, Michel, when we talked before about how just the KYC aspect of mining pools is a bit depressing.
Yeah, that's one thing too. Like that also not verified, but I read recently that more than 50% of the mining capacity is owned by KYC pools. So yeah, so the mined Bitcoin are not non-KYC actually. Like the dream of if you want clean or non-KYC coins, just mine them yourself. If you're using one of these pools, that's not true.
And I mean, you could always leave the pool, but if those pools
Yeah,
have
but then was the
large
alternative,
associated
like
hash.
go to Ocean Mining, which allegedly sends those transactions.
You're painting such a happy picture as we close here for Friday.
Yeah. So I have a philosophical question to close on this. Is if let's say like the future of Bitcoin is predominantly KYC'd, is a Bitcoin that's KYC'd better than the current system, or is it
Way
worse because
worse.
it's so
Way
traceable?
worse, in my
And
opinion. Way worse. Yeah, I mean
yeah,
it's mining in secret. I think that allows the system to be resilient at the end of the day. I mean, you still could have state actors come in and take. They know where Riot is, and they know where the ant miners are in general, right? But in China or something, and they have cracked down in China, right? And that is definitely an attack. Like when you know where the biggest mining rigs are and the biggest setup, like that is absolutely a real attack that the state can just come in and take your hardware. That's for sure. But to not have the ability to mine in secret, I think that would be again, I don't want to say the death knell because I'm never going to bet against Bitcoin. Never. But because it's just too much fun not to, let's say. But I think if you cannot mine in secret, that's really bad.
I would say if we have fully
yeah, I
KYC
agree. But
Bitcoin, it's still a very good alternative to things like SWIFT for interbank and interstate exchange. But yeah, but it's not
just because
not
of
a
settlement.
end user thing anymore.
Yeah, and we haven't seen this idea of even going back to forgetting if it's the Coinbase transaction is from a KYC pool or not. We still have not seen, even with like Wasabi or Samurai mixed UTXOs wherever they may be join market. We haven't seen like dual markets arise from mixed UTXOs
Yeah, and
and
I know
non-mixed
our
UTXOs. So
experiences are
that
pretty opposite, but my experience with mixed coins is actually pretty positive, even on exchanges.
which is interesting. It's an
The
interesting
two
data point
times I got
there.
my Kraken accounts closed is when I sent not mixed transactions.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. And then we know where they're going. I mean, even guys, you know, in my view, the good guys like Jesse Powell. I mean, he knows he can't not do that. So the KYC for sure is coming with exchanges. Unfortunately, it's coming from miners, but we cannot get to that point where, like, even a young, bright, entrepreneurial teenager who wants to spend a little bit of his parents' money on his own project and he wants to use Bitcoin completely, you know, off the grid and anonymously, just like setting up his own web page. Like, we just can never get to the point where, you know, I mean, you can't like use a hosted wallet that's not, you know, that's only KYC by the government or approved by the government. That's a very bad place to be. So I think we have to avoid that at all costs. Good enough then for this reunion episode, my friends.
Cheers.
Great. Thanks for joining. Glad we can be back together here as the year comes to a close. And not sure if we'll talk to you guys next week, but whenever we do, look forward to the next one.
Thank you, guys.